Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. And today I wanted to talk briefly about something that's on my mind quite a bit. I do bring it up sometimes in my interviews, but I wanted to kind of flesh it out here just for a few minutes. The idea that as a deconverted person who is surrounded by Christians, often a large part of what you deal with on a daily basis could be categorized as psychological warfare. And I don't, in some ways, really favor that idea because it sounds like you constantly have to look over your shoulder. You constantly have to be worried about, messaging that's coming to you and to your children. But at the end of the day, I think that is actually an accurate picture of what's happening. There are a lot of people in Christian circles who do treat this as a war. Some of them even write books and read books about doing expanding the church, expanding Christendom through military tactics. That's been going on for a long time, and many Christians take that very seriously as their calling, as part of their need to take seriously the call to expand the kingdom and to basically take over the world for Christ. In the most advanced forms, of course, we're talking about Christian nationalism, but even on just more low levels, people are often living as if they need to make Christ king over everything in their lives, over everybody around them, especially children. And when you add that all up, it does end up putting you in a spot where you are, unfortunately, but truly, thrust into the spotlight of psychological warfare on an hour-by-hour basis sometimes. And that's a hard place to be. It makes you feel like you can't be safe in your own home in some ways. You try real hard to be safe in your own skin based on your deconversion and the fact that you know that all the previous beliefs were mythology and that they have nothing to do with reality or your real life. But you're still surrounded in large part by people who really do want to manipulate you and your family and your children toward their worldview. And they know that, of course, for children, that you have to get them while they're young. Otherwise, they're going to know too much and be too independent, too autonomous. There's a child rearing dynamic there that includes a lot of brainwashing and indoctrination. It includes just the sheltering and the denial of a lot of other ideas. Make sure that kids don't get those ideas until they're firmly cemented in Christianity. And that's their calling. That's their high calling from God, to raise up little soldiers for Jesus. Even when children are involved, when it's just people in a marriage or people with their parents and family and other loved ones, it's often still very similar, where they're trying desperately to either bring Christ into the conversation or they're trying to punish you for not letting that be what you also believe. The psychological manipulation, the psychological warfare that occurs like that is absolutely emotionally draining beyond words. And many of you have talked about that in your interviews with me, and I appreciate your vulnerability on that. But it does lead you to a spot where you just feel like, does this end? Does this have any way to resolve itself? Because they just are on a constant attack mode, a constant, we have to change these people or else we have to punish them for not changing toward our beliefs, toward our worldview. And especially if you're vocal in any way, like I am, they really attack hard. Some of those attacks are more direct, and some of them are much more passive aggressive, but they add up to, again, a psychological warfare. They want to wear you down, and they want to find some way to make sure that you don't feel healthy or thriving or successful. They want to just make sure that you feel like life has turned dark now that you've left Christianity. And of course, for those of us who've experienced it, we know that it's quite the opposite. We have more peace than we've ever had. So why do they keep insisting on it? Well, they insist on it because to them, they have to have this worldview be true. Otherwise, it's just too terrorizing to think about the other side of it. That if it's not true, then what's my life been about and who am I? They can't deal with that, so they have to continue their party line. And you're left in a spot where you are you're wanting so much beauty and you're creating so much beauty, you're dwelling on so much beauty, but they insist on life being very ugly and very cantankerous and very much a warfare zone. A lot of people from the JW background have talked to me about that, how their spouse, but for sure their parents or their siblings just won't even talk to them anymore. And when there is a discussion, it's very much a punishment mindset. For those of us who are in it, where we still have the relationships, they still exist, there's still people we talk to and interact with, if you're not careful, it can be a whole new set of reasons to feel depressed. It really can. And I want to encourage those of you going through it to really guard your heart, guard your mind, guard your emotions. They will tear you down if they can, and we all know that we need to develop a thick skin, especially if you have any kind of platform or sense of being verbal about your deconversion. But even if you're quiet and it's just you doing your daily job and you're not ruffling any feathers, the fact that you're not in the fold in the same way that they want you to be, the way that they insist you be, they have a whole set of ways that they perceive life that is very destructive. It's very abusive, and they can't see it and they won't see it. But they will see you as demonic. They will see you as certainly worldly, certainly inciting sin, taking away from the glory of God, from the message of Christ and the gospel, taking away from the beauty of the Word of God, the Bible. And they really, really, really need you to fall in line, or else to fall flat on your face so that it can kind of prove, see what happens, see what happens when you walk away from the Lord. They love to see people fail. And if you don't fail, then they have to force that card. They have to make you fail. At that point, you're left with the conundrum on many levels of how do you deal with people who truly want to see you fail. They want to see you, of course, on their words would be much more like they want to see you repent. They want to see you convicted of your sin. They want to see you bow your knee to the Lord. But when you add it all up, what they're asking for is for you to do it their way or fall apart. It's their way or the highway. They are the gatekeepers. They insist on being the judge, jury, and executioner. And if you aren't careful, when you have to deal with these people every day, as I do, it is beyond excruciating, and you begin to despair. Is my life going to get better? Is there an end in sight to this? What are my options? How do I just survive and thrive in the midst of such incredible animosity? And I don't have any easy answers, of course. I'm sure you didn't expect easy answers. There are no easy answers to it. But I do want to just say a couple quick words about this, this description that I've given of what we're facing in many ways. You have to step outside of this situation emotionally. I'm not talking about divorce. I'm not talking about not talking to people. I'm not talking about separation. I'm not talking about affairs. I'm talking about just you and your mind. You have to separate yourself from it. And I do this for myself on an hourly basis. It feels like we have to find some way to say, I'm bigger than this. I transcend this bizarre cult. I transcend these bizarre beliefs with the blood magic and the scapegoating and the mythology that's just so wrapped up in their worldview. I'm bigger than this. I'm obviously separate from it, but I'm bigger than their attacks. I'm bigger than their emotional, bizarre behavior. I am bigger. I'm number one. I can be a better person. I don't have to attack back. This isn't a tit for tat. Oh, you're rude to me, so I'll be rude back to you. We can find ways to say, I acknowledge that in many ways your rationality has been decimated. You have a completely mythological worldview. Your ability to be rational is gone because of what you've done to yourself. You have thrown the keys to rationality away as you've locked yourself in your prison cell, your mythological worldview. We feel bad for them. We pity them. We feel awful that this thing has happened, and we feel awful that they really don't have any apparent way to escape anytime soon. But if we let ourselves get wrapped up in it, where it's just a fight, you say this, no, you're bad, no, you're bad, no, you're bad. we're getting back into the same old apologetics in a sense. And that's why I've said many times, I'm not looking to talk to apologists. I'm not looking to even talk to people who just want to say, you're wrong, no, you're wrong, no, you're wrong. We're done with mythology. We're done with it. We're past it. It's over. It's part of our previous life. And even though it still affects us through these people that we do dearly love, we're not going to let it have any kind of platform. Mythology as a worldview is completely wrapped up in our previous life, as it were. We are born again, and we're free. Their worldview has no power over us, but their emotional state has power over us. Their willingness to be aggressive or passive aggressive and narcissistic has a lot of ability to affect our daily lives. And so if you can find some way to begin to develop through therapy, through reading good things that just develop your ability to separate yourself, to say, you have no power here. You have no power here. This is not a case where I am going to let you rule. And failure is not an option, especially when children are involved. I will not fail at this. I will win. I will make sure that your bizarre mythological worldview does not win the day. You will not psychologically abuse children. You will not psychologically abuse me. You will not get away with it. I don't know how you sleep at night, but you will not get away with it. And when you solidify your heart, when you put, I talk to my kids a lot. I say, build the walls of your protection castle strong. Like, pretend there's like a castle of your worldview around your mind. Pretend there's waves that are going to hit it, and you have to build those walls like Mont Saint-Michel in France. You have to build the walls strong so that when they hit, they can't do anything. We talk a lot about, you don't have to accept the Bible bullets. You can always say no to them, just like Neo in the Matrix. Say no to the Bible bullets. In the same way, you have to say no to the emotional and psychological attacks that they insist on pushing at you and perpetrating on you. It is sad that you have to even deal with it. You should be able to just celebrate your freedom. But you can, in part, but you can't let your guard down. They will find any way they can to twist your good life into something bad. They really will. They are professional truth twisters. And when you step back from this, if you can't find a way to emotionally distance yourself from it, it will eventually lead you to a point where you just, like, life is so dark. And that's where they want you. They want you to feel like life is dark. It's not dark because you don't have Jesus. It's dark because they're jerks. It's dark because they're abusive. And if you don't find some way to rise above the situation, you will begin to crumble. And I know that for many of you, your situations are just as bad as mine, and some of them are much worse. And I feel so grieved for you. I really do. These are dark, dark times for some of you. And those of you that aren't in those situations, you can probably still imagine with us what some of this is like. The inhumanity of it all. People that are basically transformed into these robots for Jesus, where the party line is just, just saying the same thing over and over. And they turn into cyborgs, so to speak, for Jesus, where they just have to insist that they shove this down your throat, or just be obnoxious to you for you're not letting them do it. When children are involved, of course, there's no question, we will win. We will not let them psychologically abuse children. But in the process, guard your heart. I know that there's a verse that talks about that. I'm not trying to mimic that for the sake of trying to go back to Jesus, but that concept of guarding your emotions, guarding your thoughts, like, you do need to be transformed through the renewing of your mind, as Romans 12 would say, but it's not through Jesus. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, by truth, which is the exact opposite of Christianity, by realizing its mythology. Renew your mind, but also protect it, and say, you all will not enter my holy place. My holy of holies is my mind, and you're not welcome here until you're willing to stop trying to do this psychological abuse. But every moment is psychological warfare. Every moment you have to have your guard up. It shouldn't be that way. I wish it weren't. I wish you could just enjoy it. Just look around the beauty of your home and your family and just enjoy it. But until they're willing to lay down their arms, their psychological arms, There's no way to do it. There's just no way. And the moment that you let down your guard, they will attack you and they will try to manipulate your children. It's not worth it. Be a soldier. Be a soldier in a battle that's worth it. We are giving our children a fighting chance, and you can't give them a fighting chance if you're not a fighter. You can't give your own future, whether it's with your loved ones or with other people, you can't give your own future a fighting chance if you're not willing to be a fighter. You have to have a thick skin. You have to be able to slowly evolve to the point where you can let things bounce off of you and turn what they meant, here I go again, but turn what they meant as evil into something good. Turn something that they meant to hurt you and make it beautiful. Take their messaging and say, I'm going to take the opposite messaging. I'm going to flip it. And you want to make life dirty and ugly, I'm going to make it beautiful and wonderful. When you do that long enough, when you have that strength of mind long enough, and you plant your flag there, they eventually see it. And what happens is you're a threat, of course. You're a real threat. But eventually they realize you're not moving. You are a formidable enemy. And you don't want anyone to see you as the enemy, but they see you as the enemy, and they see you as formidable. And therefore, they have to do something to cope on their side. Now they have to cope. You've gone from being the one that has to cope to now they have to cope. And the way that they cope is traditionally, from my experience and from the stories I've seen, they start out in a hyper attack mode and eventually it just gets extremely cold. They just write you off. They don't want anything to do with you. They deal with you as little as possible, if at all. And when you get to that point, again, you don't want to get to that point. You don't want them to be cold to you, obviously. We don't want them to be that mean to us. We don't want the relationships to dissolve. But if they insist on it, if they insist on this psychological abusiveness, you have no choice but to protect yourself and your children. You have no choice but to create a situation where they, having been the extreme offender, the one on offense, they're now turned to the point of defense as they realize everything's crumbling around them. And the choice is really the ball's really in their court. The choice is up to them. Are you willing to just stand there and watch the world burn, or are you going to stop? You have to stop. You have to stop. And they won't right now. But maybe someday they will. Some people do. I've heard amazing stories where some people say, wow, like I was a really nasty person to you, and I'm sorry. I should not have shunned you. I should not have hurt you. All for mythology. This was crazy what I did to you. And I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I've seen that happen in certain cases where people have told me those stories, and it's wonderful. I celebrate it so much. But for those of you that know that that's not on the radar anytime soon, you must be in a mode where you say, I will go on the offense. I will say, I am not going to just crawl into my little hole and let you dominate with your Christian garbage verbiage, your Christian ease, this whole, we're Sparkies for Jesus, sparks to light the world. No, I will turn the tables. I will flip the tables. I will go into your marketplace and flip your tables. And I will say, no more. No more. I am the strong one. I was weak at first because I didn't have my bearings. I wasn't grounded. I was trying to figure out who I was post deconversion. But now I'm the strong one. And I'm getting stronger every day. And there's no end in sight to how strong I will get. I will rock this world, and I will rock anyone that comes across my influence. I will be a source of beauty and love and light. And your darkness that you insist on throwing at us, the darts of darkness, I will make sure that I deflect them for myself or for anyone I can protect. And when they realize, wow, you are a shield, you are a strong shield against your own heart and the hearts of the children in your lives, your loved ones, they begin to realize they have no power here. And at that point, a couple other side effects happen, and I'll talk more about some of these later because this is longer than I went to be. But one of the things that happens is eventually they just give up. I don't mean they give up mentally. They mentally think God is going to come through. He's going to win the day. He's got a plan in mind. He's going before us. He will find some way to break down the barriers. He will make the walls of Jericho, of this atheistic Jericho, fall down. God will win the day in the end. So they're mentally still in that place. But practically, they're actually despairing. They're emotionally despairing because all the tricks that they thought would work don't work. And behind the scenes, whether they know it or not, what's happening is a discrepancy of them saying the gospel has power. The word of God has power. It's like a roaring lion. Just let it loose. It will do its thing. And they let it loose and it does nothing. It does nothing at all. In fact, it makes everything worse. And they're like, what do I do now? What do I do now? I don't know. There's no gospel power. Where is it? God, where are you? What's happened? And they realize it's not working out the way they thought it would. And they keep on having this cognitive dissonance. Well, God doesn't settle all of his debts in one season. He might settle things in a year, in 2 years, in 10 years. Who knows? You might be the thief on the cross where you repent and you get to paradise just by the skin of your teeth because you confess as you're dying, Christ, you are Lord, remember me in paradise. They have these mental constructs that let them keep on pushing it off and saying, if there's no power today, there'll be power tomorrow. There'll be power someday. They just can't get it through their heads. There's no power because it's mythology. It's stinking mythology. And they won't admit it. It doesn't transform lives. It hurts people. They just keep on coming up with some way to explain why life just isn't working. And they cannot admit it. Life isn't working because your worldview is profoundly broken. And you are a broken person. Therefore, every relationship you touch will be intrinsically broken. Because you are bringing endless bad ideas to the table and insisting that everyone else buy them, believe them, and worship their psycho god. When you put people in that spot where they are so weak and so lazy and so clumsy and just everything is falling apart and they don't know why, but they give up. They give up and just give it all to God. That is where you become stronger than ever in your insistence that you will not let this psychological warfare hurt children or you anymore, and that you will do things, you will create constructs and activities and songs and videos and stories, books. You will create whatever you have to create to make sure that this path that you've done such a good job at, that it stays firmer than ever, stronger than ever, so that there's no way that people ever get tempted to go back. Because you don't want there to be, again, there's no equivocation here. This isn't, well, maybe we need a softer, gentler Jesus. Maybe the hellfire preachment was wrong, but we just need to do a progressive Christianity. Bullshit. You don't. You don't need that stuff. You don't need any of it. You need to get out of mythology. You need to make sure that your kids, who are so malleable and so pliable, so vulnerable, that they are so well protected that they understand what this is, that it's mythology, and that it can never capture their heart and mind again. When you do this more and more, and the Christians realize, oh, you left, and I can't get the kids are not falling in line with this. Everybody's leaving. Everybody's falling away. Proof, the end times are here. In the end, many will fall away. And they just keep on explaining it, keep on wringing their hands. Woe is me, this is awful. God, when are you going to step in and save the day? It's so sad. It's pitiful to see. And as Paul himself said, they are of all people to be most pitied. And they are, it's true. They are very much to be pitied. But there is no equivocation on the radar. We will never fail. We will always win. We will not let our children get sucked into this psychological game. We will not. We will fight on their behalf because they're not able to fight for themselves. If you can't protect children, if you can't stand up and protect the most vulnerable among you, what are you good for? You have to protect the children at all costs. Their minds, their hearts, their lives are worth so much more than Christians will ever give them. I do it for my kids, and what I do is incredibly challenging, and it takes so much effort and energy, emotional energy, physical energy. But you know what? I'm building. It's a slow build. I'm building a foundation. But when I'm done this thing, my foundation is going to be a bulwark that never fails. This is going to be a bastion, a place of refuge for so many people for generations to come. This is good stuff. This is the meat that we've been looking for. We're going to chew on it and chew on it and chew on it. This is where the rubber meets the road. Are you willing to strengthen yourself, to look to see through their games, but also to meet them at their games, to meet them where they're at, and to say, you want metaphorical hand-to-hand combat with these psychological ideas? I will match your ideas. I will match your philosophies one for one. I will tear down these strongholds. Any stronghold that takes children and threatens them with hellfire and with blood magic and scapegoating, I will tear all that down. I will tear it down. I will not fail. I will win. There is absolutely no way that you will get away with abusing children. And you do this long enough, it becomes your banner, it becomes your battle cry. And people will see you are at the front of the pack. You are making a difference. You are not sitting quietly in the shadows hoping someone else will stand up and speak. I will speak. I will speak up. I will make a difference. I will make big waves, huge waves. I will make a tsunami. Please do not stand by while children get emotionally manipulated by Christians, by this worldview. Please do what you can. If you have no ideas, I'm coming up with more and more ideas all the time on my channel that I will be sharing. Songs, books, videos, anything you can do. But the most important thing, I've said this many times, get yourself educated on where the mythology came from. If you can't talk through Sumerian, Egyptian, and Greco-Roman mythology, Mithraism, ancient Platonic philosophy, and so forth, if you can't talk through those things, if you can't talk through the Homeric epics, get educated. You need to know where this thing came from. So at the very basic level, if nothing else, you can say, can I show you where the original story was? Do you see how it was copied? Do you see this or not? If you can't do that blindfolded, I'm sorry, you're not equipped enough. Equip yourself more and more and more. And then equip yourself emotionally. I will not let this get to me. I will be a soldier for myself and for my children and for generations to come. If you do this, we will make a huge difference for our planet. We will make such strides in the next few generations to help our world be a much better place. We are going to win. We are going to win because we are on the side of truth, and we are on the side of rationality, and we are on the side of healthiness. They will not win this thing. We must fight. We must equip ourselves in every way. We must equip our children. The more that you do this, the more that you're a threat to them, the more you're on their radar, the better. We cannot sit by idly while they try to take over our families, take over little minds, take over our country and our world for their mythology. We must stand firm. It starts on the lowest of levels, your mind, your children, and branch out from there. We don't want to make little waves anymore. We're done with the little waves. We're going to make tsunamis, and we're going to change this world. And we feel so bad that some of the people that we love, that we wish would open their minds up to rationality, they're not going to do it. They're going to see this whole thing as a fight that they must win, and so they're going to dig in their heels as well. And there's nothing you can do about that. You can't fix people who aren't willing to be fixed. You can't help people wake up who insist on staying in their comas. You just can't, and that breaks your heart. It's so sad, especially when these are your dearest loved ones. But at the end of the day, there's a big battle going on. They insist on calling it that. There's a battle, a psychological warfare going on. And I would ditto it from a different perspective. But there is a psychological warfare going on. It's a warfare not from the devils versus God, of the sin versus holiness, of the world versus heaven, flesh versus spirit. It's not this dichotomy stuff. There is a war, though, going on, and that war is Christians with their bizarre behavior, their bizarre worldview, against us who are trying to make the world a place of rationality. And they see the pawns in this. The pawns are the children. And if they can get you to back off, if they can get you to say, can you just let us teach our stuff to the kids, and then the kids can decide when they're 18. They're tricking you. They know that if they can get the kids by the time they're 7 or 8 or 9, they've got them. You don't have to wait till age 18 to say, oh, at age 18 you decide what you want to do. If they can get them by 7 or 8, they've got them. Christians know that very well. We acknowledge that this is a real battle. It's a battle of them versus us, unfortunately. It's a battle of rationality versus mythology. And if they won't stop hurting children, and they won't stop hurting you actively or passively, then we will step up to the plate. We will take our place in this battle, and we will make a difference, a huge difference. And our lives become more beautiful, more lovely, more loving than they ever have. And if they won't see it, they can't see it, they won't see it, it has to be what it is. We can't change people. We can't force people to change. We wish they would change. We wish they'd be loving. If they won't, and if they insist on these bizarre messagings, so be it. We will live our lives regardless, and we will make our lives beautiful and the lives of everyone around us more beautiful. If you can, start somewhere. Start somewhere. Learn more about mythology, about where it came from. Start to write songs about protecting your mind and your kids' minds. Write poetry. Write something. Start a blog. Do anything. Get interviewed on one of these channels like mine. Share your story and at least equip yourself on some level and begin to brace yourself and say, I'm aware that when I speak up, they will vociferously attack me. And your response is not to attack back. It is to say, there is a completely different battle going on, and I'm going to stay focused on that. Not your little side battle of Jesus is Lord, no, he's not. Yes, he is. No, he's not. That's not our battle. Our battle is not apologetics. Those are such misplaced efforts, in my opinion. Our battle is for people to realize the bizarreness of this worldview and where it came from. They need to understand comparative mythology, and they need to understand the rationality of thinking through, does this whole thing even make sense? And this is a philosophical and an academic effort. Apologetics isn't going to cut it. It's not even going to come close to cutting it. Don't fight their battles and don't get sucked into their battles. You're just basically going to say, I'm done with that. We're now going to go live the right way. We're going to go live with rationality. And you're not trying to drag their worldview into the conversation. You're trying to leave their worldview in the dust. I hope that's clear with some of the stuff I'm saying. We're not here to engage the Christian world. We're here to engage Christians, but we're not here to engage the Christian worldview as much. We are here to leave it in the dust. It's past tense. It's post-mortem. We're done. We are reclaiming our identities now. We are starting our new lives post-mythology. Brace yourself for the impact of what it's like, not just to realize you're in a warfare with these Christians, but that your warfare is a different kind, and it's going to, in many ways, ignore what they are doing. You're not here to engage them. You're here to ignore their worldview. If you can't ignore Christianity, if you can't say, I'm done talking about it, then they're sucking you into their little quibbles. Well, what about this passage? What about that passage? Isn't there so much truth here and there? Look at this miracle. They'll suck you into 1,000 conversations if you let them. Our goal is not to get sucked into 1,000 conversations with apologists. Our goal is to leave them in the dust. Our goal is to say, you have become entirely irrelevant. And unfortunately, for some of us, that includes our dearest loved ones. They have become entirely irrelevant. And when they realize that that's what's happening, they're going to find a seat, they're going to cross their arms, cross their legs, get super grumpy, and fold up and say, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. This is ridiculous. This is awful. Bingo. Checkmate.